Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the 8th seminar in this year's SCRIBO series. I think it won't be wrong to say that one of the things that characterizes these seminars is their diversity of topics and their diversity of voices. And in the same vein, today we have here with us Dr. Albert Davletshin, who will be talking about the Olmecs society and the earliest evidence for writing in Mesoamerica. Albert completed his PhD dissertation in 2003 on the paleography of Maya hieroglyphic writing. Very appropriately, he did so at the Knarazov Center for American Studies in Moscow. In the last 2 decades, he has been a prolific researcher and writer, dealing with both the writing systems and languages of 2 main geographical areas, Mesoamerica, of course, and the Pacific. So Albert has not just investigated and written about the Maya, the Aztec, and other early scripts of Mesoamerica. He has also worked extensively on the Rongorongo script of Easter Island. And Albert has not just worked from his office or library either. He has conducted linguistic fieldwork on the Rapa Nui language on Easter Island, on Nukeria, I'm surely mispronouncing this language, but on Nukeria, which is an outlier Polynesian language of Papua New Guinea, and among the Tepehua of Mexico. So it is not surprising that recently Albert has moved closer to some of his objects of interest. He is now a researcher at the Instituto de Antropología de la Universidad Veracruzana of Jalapa in Mexico. I will now leave the floor to him without further ado, but before I do so, I would just like to announce that the next SCRIBO seminar will be on the 23rd of June, so in 2 weeks' time, and we will have Rostislav Oreshko with the talk Hieroglyphic Writing of Anatolia, Observations on the Origin and the Early Stages of Development, 2nd millennium BCE. Now, Albert, over to you.
First of all, I want to thank Silvia and Miguel and the whole team, whole SCRIBO team, for organizing this wonderful set of events. It is great to meet many colleagues and friends, hear them to giving talks on scripts, and also it is great to meet people who we know only from their papers. And of course, it's great to hear new ideas about the scripts all over the world, at least for us people who are doing scripts. I'm going to talk today about the origin of writing in Mesoamerica a little bit, and also about the Olmec writing. And from the very beginning, I should say that Mesoamerica is somehow important when we talk about scripts and about writing, because it's one of few places over the world where writing was invented independently. And of course, the New World in general is important because of this reason. It's a place where complex societies, states, writing, and many other different things were developed independently. But Mesoamerica has a very special place in this picture, exactly because it is the only place in the Americas when we have written sources which predate considerably the arrival of Europeans. So what is Mesoamerica? Mesoamerica is a cultural area. It's a Bayesian concept. And it's a cultural area of complex societies which share a set of similarities brought about by millennia of interactions. And the typical traits we have in this region are eating maize, beans, and chili together, also plating maize and beans together, drinking chocolate, building pyramids, the decimal number system, 260-day ritual calendar, and logosyllabic writing systems. And it is a cultural area with many languages, many unrelated language families, and also many cultures. But being together for so long time and interacting with each other, these cultures accumulated shared components. And it's also a place of one of the highest, one of the places of the highest diversity in all over the world. And working in Mesoamerica, we use the maxim one village, one language, one tradition, one culture. And it's somehow it is exaggeration, but it really works this way. Like, for example, I'm doing my field work in South Huasteca, and I'm working in Itipeo village. There is another village, half an hour walking uphill. It is Otomi village, another language family. Going downhill, another village speaking a Totonac language. And you can see here my map with distribution of languages and language families in the region, more or less about the time of the arrival of Spaniards. And you can see how many languages, actually how many language families have been in this region. And what is marked with shading this distribution of Nahuatl languages, or Aztec languages. And there are many scripts. So there are so many scripts, like this is more or less from one period, from classic time. And we have Maya, and Cochumaruapa, and Ismail or Olmec writing, Zapotec, Mixtec, Nunez, Epiclassic, Gard, of course. It's more or less the same like in the old world. Once the idea of writing is invented, people are fascinated by writing. They also try to gain some economic and political advantages from it, and they start to borrow writing systems and adapt them from their neighbors, or they invent their own writing system, basing themselves on the idea that you can write a language by means of visual signs. And many of us are playing, making these family charts of Mesoamerican writing systems. This one was made by friends Christophe Helmke and Alfonso Bacadena. And sometimes it's difficult to see genealogical connections between different writing traditions. And sometimes we are not really sure that we have a writing because the number of probable inscriptions is not enough. But we know that the main material in Mesoamerica was paper. And of course, paper doesn't survive for long in tropical climate. So when we have an inscription, this is always a monumental inscriptions or inscribed portable objects. And it's like a kind of like that suddenly we have something not on paper and suddenly something survives. Here you can discern two main branches, so to say, like Western and Southern. And they do look different a bit, but of course, the main question is who was the first and where the writing originated in Mesoamerica. And today we have like different places where writing is attested very early or quite early in Oaxaca, in central Mexico, in the Pacific coast of Guatemala, in the Maya area. And we have also something coming in the area of archaeological Olmecs, but it seems relatively late. It's actually what is called epi-Olmec writing already, because it's coming quite late. And you can see the main division between writing systems in Mesoamerica. There is something going on the west. So these scripts are more similar among them, and something is going on the east. The classic representative of the east is Maya writing, and Oaxacan and also the late Aztec writing, classical representatives of the western family. And Olmec area is actually exactly in between. So it's like a place where different writing traditions, two subfamilies are connected. Eastern writing systems, they characterized by long count and glottography is emphasized. So grammatical markers are spelled explicitly, and many phonetic complements are found. And even the epi-Olmec writing has not been deciphered yet. We can see the same patterns there. And there are a lot of linear texts. Linear texts are predominant in this area. On the west, we don't have long count. It's all about 260-day calendar. Glottography de-emphasized in the sense that we don't have so many phonetic complements, and grammatical markers are frequently underspelled. And they are predominantly non-linear texts. So very few, if any, texts show signs arranged in linear column format. And when we think about the origin of writing, of course, we want to talk a little bit about forerunners of writing, because it is a place of independent development, and it is fascinating to think about what could be the source of writing. And I'm rephrasing here what John Justison wrote in his paper on the origin of writing in Mesoamerica. The emergence of writing is favored by an association of individual graphic units with individual linguistic units. Actually, John Justison says that there should be some forerunners of writing. I'm not really sure about this, and I would rather say that the emergence of writing is favored by this association, like already existing cultural practice, established cultural practice in the area. And I also not really sure that the emergence of writing should be a very slow, accidental process. I remember Yuri Knorosov always saying that writing emerges in one place in a relatively short period of time, and usually invented by one person or by a group of persons. And this is understandable if we say that writing is something which allows to write you a particular natural language. Then we also understand that writing usually, at least potentially, can represent anything in this language. So you need like a syllabic chart or syllabary, and then until you have finished your syllabary, it is not writing yet. So you need like literally to sit down and invent at least the basic set of signs which allow to write here in this language. But coming back to the forerunners, and in his paper, John Justison suggested that sacred calendar played the important role in the development of writing in Mesoamerica. Sacred calendar is something very important and very characteristic of Mesoamerican cultures. There are two cycles. One cycle is 13-day week, which are going from counting numbers from 1 to 13, and a 20-day week, which are individual day names which are going in a strict order. And when they combined, they're giving us 260 days in total. And we do have calendrical signs and numerals shared very well presented in all Mesoamerican scripts, and these are the earliest examples from different regions, from Oaxaca and central Mexico and Olmec area. And actually, numerals are written in more or less the same way in Mesoamerica, pointing out that they derive from the same source. So what John Justison was saying is that there is a practice among calendar priests to count days using stones and seeds. So you can see here a photo from today's Guatemala with a priest counting days, and then saying that this manipulating stones on daily basis and unconsciously associating certain objects with certain linguistic units. This could serve as forerunners of writing in Mesoamerica. There is something here which is problematic, at least as far as I know. In ethnographic records, we don't have special objects representing individual day names. So this could, at least it is working today in the same way as it was 3,000 years ago. They could serve the purpose for development numerals, but not something else. And what I want to suggest in this talk is that Mesoamerican ritual maps played their role in the development of writing in Mesoamerica. Once again, this is something very typical of Mesoamerica. These ritual maps, the representation of the universe by means of the objects that can be moved and manipulated in different ways. And we can find them even today. So, for example, this is a photo from San Pedro Tziltzacuapan in Veracruz. And you can see Don Severo preparing ritual mesa. So this is, he starts to make the mesa is actually is an image of universe. And you can see here east and west, north and south, and you can also see stars in the sky. And he's putting his candle, which is the center of the world, and Papa cut dolls of the primary deities and spirits already on the table. And it is going to be more and more complicated. So it will be a very complex picture of the universe. And sometimes what we see here during the ritual, for example, we have a lot of offerings and beer and coffee and water and earth. But many of these offerings are not just offerings, they're actually representation of certain objects or certain deities. And ritual special is they manipulate them on daily basis and making association, for example, between such and such Papa cat doll and such deity. So this might serve as the beginning for the development of writing systems in Mesoamerica. It might have given them the idea that you can write the words. And I'm not going to talk more about the origins. What I want to show in this talk is that the most emblematic objects of the Olmec art were inscriptions. And these are hieroglyphic texts that have not been recognized so far, and they do represent a writing system on their own. And this probably was the earliest writing system in Mesoamerica we can see in the records. And my objectives for today are to give a short introduction about the Olmecs, to try to show why the Olmecs are expected to be the inventors of the script in Mesoamerica, to see previous attempts to identify Olmec writing, which I don't consider successful, and try to formulate criteria which allows us to distinguish between writing and non-writing, at least in this particular cultural region. You can see here a map with two main sites, two main archaeological sites, La Venta and San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan, which are two main centers of the Olmec culture. And you can see also secondary sites which are coming later in the region and which are descendants or followers of the Olmec culture. And when we talk about the Olmecs, we actually have two different concepts referring to the Olmecs. On one hand, it is a stylistic horizon of early Mesoamerica. So everything is done in very particular style. And this style probably came from the archaeological culture of the Gulf Coast, but it's not the same. And there are archaeological Olmecs, like a specific culture in a very specific place in the coast of the Gulf of Mexico with two major sites, San Lorenzo, Tenochtitlan, and La Venta. And it was considered and suggested that the Olmecs was a mother culture of Mesoamerica. They were the first in developing complex societies, inventing writing, ritual calendar, and so on. And of course, this concept was heavily criticized lately in many papers. Just some basic facts about San Lorenzo, which is a city built on water, on a nature. It was a natural islet, but it was expanded. You can see phases. In its best times, this place had more than 100 sculptures, monumental sculptures, 800 square hectares, and around 12,000 people were living in this place. And 12,000 persons need like 700 square hectares of cultivated land to live now on, to eat from it. We don't have such good data for La Venta, It is also a city built on water in a very similar way. And it's coming later. It's actually taking its place when San Lorenzo is losing its grasp. And the most emblematic of the archaeological culture, you can see a picture of a colossal sculpted head from San Lorenzo Tenochtitlan. Most scholars agree that they represent the individual portraits of powerful individuals, most likely rulers, probably chiefs, paramount chiefs. There are 17 heads at total. 10 of them were found in San Lorenzo, and 4 from La Venta, and 3 more from a secondary site later. Some of them are almost 4 meters high and 20 tons of weight. And those we can date from San Lorenzo actually they're very early, quite early. Something in between 1,400 and 1,200 BC. And it also should be mentioned that there is no source of stone in this area. So the stone for manufacturing these colossal heads was brought from far away. Actually, La Venta is located like 100 kilometers away from the source of the stone. Olmecs represent a very nice case when we do know which language they spoke. Actually spoke a Mesoamerican language. The divergence of the 2 main branches, which are Socan languages and Mexican languages, actually coincide very well with the time when San Lorenzo starts to develop, starts to evolve. And these languages are located exactly in this area, more or less. But the main reason for considering Mesoamerican languages to be related to the ecological culture of Olmecs is that many Mesoamerican languages, probably all of them, have old loans, old Mesoamerican loans, which has to do with religion and in particular with day names. So they look like a culture triggers in the region, like they supplied other linguistic groups with sacred calendar and many ideas having to do with religious sphere and ritual. Another reason for considering Olmecs to be the inventors of writing in Mesoamerica is that when we look at the map with distribution of different writing systems in the region, we see that the Olmecs are found exactly in the center. And we can remember the linguistic theory of migration put forward by Edward Sapir quite early. So this is the center of gravity model, which suggesting that actually the invention of writing happened somewhere here. Oh, this was the initial place from where it was distributed to the west and to the east. Of course, this model doesn't work very well all the time, but in fact, in Mesoamerica, it works pretty well for many language families, probably because this area was heavily populated already 3,000 years ago. And another serious reason for considering Olmecs to be the inventors of the script, of the writing Mesoamerica is that Maya script has some features that indicate that it was like the basics of the writing was borrowed from somebody else. And this is idea originated by a very good friend and colleague of mine, Alfonso Lacadena, who was looking in the syllabic grid of Maya script and saying that we have some signs which cannot be interpreted their own. We have the same signs modified intentionally with some diacritic graphic elements. And we also have some signs which have acrophonic origin. So what he was saying, and that some initial set of signs was borrowed from another source, and because of this we cannot understand how the iconics is related to the sound. And then that people who adapted the script, they started to invent signs for the sounds which were not present in the original system. And what is actually very interesting in this scheme that we do have some problems distinguishing B sounds and M sounds in the Maya syllabic grid. And Nihisokan languages actually are the only languages in Mesoamerica which don't have this phonological opposition, like indicating that the original script was based on Nihisokan language, and then, like, again, suggesting that the prototype of the Maya script actually was an Olmec script. There are two problematic issues with this suggestion, and it is difficult to see the patterns, and sometimes we are not sure about how we interpret the signs. And it is also true that we do have a few of these signs in the later Olmec script, but actually not so many can be identified. And it's also true that some of these signs which have clearly iconics and which are understandable from Maya languages, they cannot be understood from Nihisokan languages either. It's like one good example is a syllable te, which depicts a rabbit's head. So there are no words for rabbit in Maya languages, starting with pe, and there are no words for rabbit in Nihisokan languages starting with. But this is very suggestive. So it's like really indicated that, first of all, Maya people, they borrowed the idea of writing in the initial set of syllabic signs from somebody else. And we also have as possible descendants of the Olmec script. So they come in later, and they come in the same area. And here you can see La Mojara, which only one text is coming from this small site, but this text bears like 500 signs, and it's already very elaborate and quite early in the 2nd century AD. Once again, indicating that the writing was in use in this area for a long time. And before to start discuss possible examples of writing in the Olmec area, we need to talk a little bit about writing in Mesoamerica. And writing in Mesoamerica it is not that easy. And there are several reasons for it. Like, first of all, pictorial scripts. And all of them are pictorial scripts, and signs tend to depict recognizable objects and actions. And Mesoamerica is also an area of highly developed figurative and narrative iconography. These figurative signs, they tend to make complex ligatures, so signs are combined together, and this combination, they iconically motivated frequently. And texts tend to be embedded, inscribed, or combined with iconography. In many traditions, non-linear text predominate, and in some traditions, emblematic text predominate. And there is a lot of visual thinking involved in Mesoamerican scripts. So let's to see some examples. This is still a 31 from Tikal. It is my area. There is a long inscription on the backside of the stela. Here it's a front side, and actually just a part of it. And we can see Siach Chan Kawil putting a headdress on his head, and his father supervising this ritual. And what we can see is the name of the person inscribed in his head. We also see his family name, or the name of the founder of the dynasty, appearing here. The name of his father, who is looking down from the skies, and who is holding a ceremonial bar with the glyphs of the deity favoring the Tikal dynasty coming out. And we also can see the name of his grandfather here. So you can see how complex can it be, and it's also that all of these are combined by 2 or 3 signs. Okay? And they combine in a very fancy way. So, for example, Siach Chan Kawil actually means the god Kawil is born in the sky. And we have the sign of sky, a logograph for sky, Chan here, splitting with a baby Kawil coming out of it, right? Or we have Nu Yash Ayin here, who is looking down, but the sign for Yash, green, is inscribed in its snout, and he is bearing a kind of bundle in the headdress, and this bundle is actually the syllable, right? And it was noticed for a long time that Mesoamerican cultures, probably all Mesoamerican cultures, visually associated name glyphs with the head and the face of the person. So this is why glyphs representing personal names tends to appear in this area. And this is another example I want to show you. These are Teotihuacan shots from Berlin Ethnological Museum, which it's an example of the Teotihuacan writing. And we can see an owl here, and we can see a shield and arrows, a fancy headdress, feather headdress, something not that well understood. Actually, it's also formed by bird feathers, and a kind of star here, and something similar to water in Teotihuacan iconography. And this design is actually repeated 3 times on this spot. So we have different shards, and they making the same 3 times repeating. And thanks to the inscriptions from early Tikal, from early classic Tikal. One of them is still at 31. We have just seen. We know that actually this is the name of the first king of Teotihuacan, with his title of the ruler, and probably the toponymic place of origin. So what looks like a fancy combination of symbols and something ornamental, even repeating 3 times, is actually logosyllabic writing. Let's have a look at the examples that were suggested to be examples of Olmec writing recently. One of them is seal found in San Andres in the state of Tabasco in Mexico. It bears an image of a bird, and this was considered as a number 3, and this like a calendrical sign, Lord. But actually there are many problems with these interpretations. First of all, seals were not used for writing in Mesoamerica. They were used for stamping cloth and making ornaments and designs, but not for writing. This would be a unique example. Secondly, looking in this image with attention, we can recognize an eye, eyebrow, snout, and overall it looks like image of a wing god in later Mesoamerican cultures. And bird is like saying or singing something. So this combination of graphic elements or iconic motifs can be interpreted as iconography, actually. So it's a singing bird, and the singing bird was probably stamped on cloth for making very nice closets. Now, it's difficult to be sure about this interpretation, but it's impossible to posit the existence of Olmec writing basing ourselves just on this problematic example, which can be interpreted in a different way. Another artifact bearing graphic designs was suggested, was discussed extensively. It was going viral as an example of the earliest writing system in Mesoamerica, Cascajal block. And you can see drawing here is actually quite a heavy green stone. And there are many problems with this text. First of all, it looks like a fake. It's difficult to be sure about a fake, but it lacks archaeological context, and people wanted to sell it to the archaeologists for a unfair amount of money, actually. Importantly, the distributions of signs is anomalous, so it doesn't look like a natural language standing behind of this. Its social functions are unclear, at least from the original perspective. And even if it is a real object, and it is, if it were a writing system which existed in Mesoamerica long before other writing systems, we don't see any connection of these with later examples in Mesoamerica. So no descendants of this system are known. And this is the third example I will discuss briefly. It is Monument 13 from La Venta. Once again, Alfonso La Cadena was suggested, was given many new insights on the interpretation of this monument. So what we see here is actually like is a person looking right and holding a kind of banner or standard or maybe a knife in his hand. It's somehow unusual in Mesoamerica to see a person looking right, but actually this is a convention typical from the earliest examples of monumental sculpture in Eastern Mesoamerica. We see here a number 1, something which looks like an owl head. Then we have a raptorial bird here, and we have a footprint there. And even in late classic Yaxchilan in Maya area, we frequently find this layout. So glyphs referring to a person, they embrace the person, so they appear on different sides of the person. And this actually makes a lot of sense, because when we start here, we have a calendrical information that might be a calendrical name of the person, something which was used in and still is used in some places in Mesoamerica. Then we have a raptorial bird probably representing the personal name of the person. And then we have the verb here, because footprints are prototypical signs for basing intransitive verbs in Mesoamerica, like to come, to go, or to walk. And suddenly, all of this makes sense. And importantly, what we have here, we have a Mihisocian word order. Because we start with the day, and then we have subject, and then we have verb. And Mihisocian languages are the only languages of Mesoamerica with verb final word order. But this is not an Olmec writing in the strict sense of the word, because it's too late for being Olmec writing. It is already can be dated like 400 to 100 BC. In order to formulate some criteria or some rules how to distinguish between writing and non-writing in Mesoamerica, which is a kind of tricky subject, I will give a definition of writing in order to base myself on this definition and trying to derive some rules how to identify writing, how to distinguish writing from non-writing, from iconography. So writing for me will be in this talk a system of visually perceived signs developed to transmit messages in a particular language. And the purpose of this is to control the reader's behavior. And this is somehow important, because the reader doesn't need to know how to read actually text. And we can see that calligraphies and pseudo-inscription also work pretty well with this definition. So here are my 5 thumb rules. Written signs transmit linguistic messages, and that means that they can be understood as part of iconographic scenes. This is a tricky one. We need to know pretty well how to deal with local iconography, but still it's very important. Signs tend to appear in groups because frequently one sign doesn't suffice to write a message. The same text can be written in different ways because allography, phonetic complements, and substitutions. Texts possess social function, and one rule is that one example is not enough. because you can always find alternative interpretation for one example. Only several examples can make sense. And we can see this illustration of this rule in some examples. So here we can see monument 65 from Kamenal Huyu, and we can see 3 individuals sitting on their thrones and talking to the captives in front of them. And the 3 of them, they bear strange designs on their hats. And looking more closely, we can see a tobacco leaf here and a snake head. We can see something like smoke or fire and a graphic design, which looks like the logograph for the sun in Maya script, jewels. And here something similar, very abstract, non-understandable. But this looks similar to the logograph for sky in Maya script. And probably it is a king list. So this is a sequence of the kings who acceded to the throne in certain place. So because of this, they have sacrificial captives in front of them. And these are actually glyphs representing the personal names, because it's not like people in real life are bearing tobacco leaves and snake heads on their heads, or having sun giving smoke. Okay, so we can see very well that this is something that doesn't fit to the iconography, and because of this, it should be considered writing. One example from the first page of the Aztec Codex Santa Maria Asunción. And 4 first examples of personal names you can see here. 2 of them are written by 1 sign, and 2 of them are actually a combination of 2 signs. And here you can see that this is Esmali, and it's written like a twisted chord with the blood coming out from the chord. So it's a typical example how 2 signs are combined in a complex, graphically or iconically motivated ligature in Mesoamerica. And of course, these are basic examples of how you can read the word Bahlam Jaguar in Maya script. It can be a logograph, it can be logograph with a phonetic complement, or it can be written absolutely syllabically, Balama, and we also have different signs for syllable Ba and for the syllable Ma. So this is what I consider Olmec writing. Let's start with the monument, monument 19 from La Venta. This is middle pre-classic. We see a person, probably a priest, sitting and bearing a complex headdress, which is a mask of a serpent. We see an image of a feathered serpent appearing behind him, and as Karl Taube had suggested, this is probably one of the earliest representation of Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpent in Mesoamerica. And the person here is actually impersonating or representing this deity, which is kind of typical ritual practice in Mesoamerica. But what we see here, there is a box and 2 quetzal birds appearing over there. And it's like, it is suggestive that actually these Quetzal birds, they have to do with Quetzalcoatl, and that this is actually representing the word snake in a rebus manner. We have another example from Ojo de Agua and Chiapas, which also is very early date, from Middle Classic. We see a person representing a young maize god or maize baby. He also is wearing a headdress, which is a maize baby's headdress. And we have a glyphic panel here with an image of the maize baby and something kind of zigzag pattern, which can be interpreted as lightning. And we know that young maize god is associated with lightning in Mesoamerica because he has lightning as his principal weapon. He can produce storm and heavy rains and lightning and thunder. And once again, the same pattern. Like the same idea is repeated 3 times here, and it's a self-referential in the sense, like repeating the same information. This is typical of Mesoamerica. And here we are going to look attentively in what is going on with the colossal Olmec heads. And actually, all of them, they bear graphic designs, something that cannot be interpreted iconographically. Like, for example, here, this head from San Lorenzo, it bears a kind of box, a jaguar paw, and something what is usually depicts a jade bead in later Mesoamerican writing systems. Here we can see 3 macaw heads appearing on the headdress, and it's maybe pointing out in the same direction as we have seen in Teotihuacan. The personal glyphs repeats frequently. We cannot see, it is not well preserved here what is going on. And actually, Mark Zander in his recent paper was asking the question if they are glyphs or if they're just some emblematic references to individuals, because this has the portraits, they're highly individualized. Right? Here we see beads and threads. Here we see jaguar paws holding and catching a fishtail. Something abstract and ununderstandable here, but once again, glyphs sometimes they're abstract. And there is a very nice small detail here. This is what is called body part marker. So when you cut a hand off, you will see bones. And this is very typical of Eastern Mesoamerican scripts to have this indication of body part marker on all scripts. Here we can see 2 cut off hands. They're not very well preserved, but we can see them clearly. 2 feathers here. Not well preserved in this case. Here we can see jade beads, which can be part of the actual headdress, but then we have a bird claw over there. which is of course not like people have bird claws of this size on their heads. We also have 4 more examples from La Venta. Only 2 of them are well preserved enough. And one of them bears a kind of flower, at least some flowers are represented later in a similar way in Maya script. And another one is having an eagle claw on the top of the head. And importantly, all examples from tres zapotes, late secondary site, they don't have graphic designs on the top of the heads. Right. If we have portraits of important individuals, probably rulers, and they highly individualized, and they bear something which actually should be interpreted as hieroglyphics according to the 5 sum rules we have established. The social function is clear, so their rulers and their personal names are represented. And if we have a secondary site, so probably they were not allowed, or they didn't know how to write, so their status was not that high, so they didn't use writing on colossal heads. And importantly, still problematic example, we do see something similar to the design appearing on one of the heads in La Venta and in Monument 1. This is a depiction of a scene with a ruler orchestrating or heading the new harvest ritual, harvesting new young maize crops. And something over there resembles strikingly what we have seen on the colossal head. This example is still problematic, at least because it's only one example. Then we can see this correspondence between the designs of VM on the colossal heads and on a stela. Let's make some statistic. We have agreed on the criteria we can use for distinguishing the text and iconography. We have 12 examples of non-linear text with some 19 signs in total. All 12 are incomprehensible as iconography. At least 5 bear 2 graphic designs, which are arbitrarily combined with each other. It's not like in real life you see jaguar paws cut off and holding a fish tail. And in 2 cases, what is written seems to describe what is depicted. So the self-referential text, very typical of Mesoamerica. And we can conclude that this is a writing system that has not been recognized previously as a writing system. The amount of examples is not enough to decipher it, but it's enough to identify that this is a writing system. It is unclear whether Olmecs script is connected to a Olmec one, but we do see this nice connection with the body part marker to the Maya script and to the Olmec script. And there is also an interesting connection to Teotihuacan writing. Namely that the signs are repeated 2 or 3 times. And dates and places nicely fit our expectation about the first writing in Mesoamerica. It hasn't been recognized as a writing system, but it looks like a prototypical early writing system of Mesoamerica. And importantly, social function of this text can be easily understood from the regional perspective. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Albert. I would have at least one question, but I would like to leave the floor first for anyone else in the audience that would like to ask you any questions regarding your stimulating presentation on these examples you defended here as writing. And I already see at least two hands raised. So right away, I will ask, I see on the first spot, Gordon Whittaker. I will ask him to unmute himself and ask the question, and then the rest of people that might want to do the same. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot, Albert. Great talk. Very important to have your feedback on the Olmec. That's an area that's highly debated and discussed, and there hasn't been much recently that rigorously handles the monuments that you were dealing with. So I think you've brought up some very, very interesting points. The problem is still distinguishing between iconography and writing. I don't think that we can say we've agreed on enough on the characteristics in order to be sure that something is writing and not iconography. With regard to Cascajal, your point was very well made. The fact is, it's unique, it's suspicious. All of the elements on it are found in iconography. Where do we have a writing system in which every single sign is also a symbol in iconography? That would be very, very strange. I mean,
I absolutely agree, and also it does look like something copied from Jerome's list of iconographic motifs in Olmec art, and you cannot find this in Olmec art, but you can find this in the list of Olmec iconographic motifs.
I agree with you. But with regard to dating, to the earliest dating, okay, if we remove that, then that brings the question of how early a writing could be considered Olmec. And of course, the headdresses, that's a very, very important idea and needs further discussion. It could very well be name glyphs, as you're saying. I like the idea. But again, we need to have a way of proving it, because crowns in European states often vary from king to king without them necessarily naming the person, but they distinguish the rulers, and that's already an important observation of yours. But the dating, you showed a chart showing Lacadena's scheme of the origin of the development of Mesoamerican systems. And I think that's a very good illustration. But with regard to the Olmec, it's strange that it has other later Mihe-Soke systems as only indirectly derived, but it has the Zapotec system as being directly derived. But in fact, the earliest writing that we can prove is Zapotec, and it's earlier than Monument 13 in the Olmec area. So the only definitive evidence of writing is at its earliest is Zapotec and not Olmec. And the San Jose Mogote example you gave, pretty much every Oaxaca specialist, and I think I was the first to write on it, dismisses that as early Zapotec. It's later. It's like around 200 BC probably, on the basis of the style. So that's of course again highly debated. So we really don't know, Zapotec or Olmec first.
Yeah, we need more examples. And what I wanted to show is that we have a decent set of examples. And we have at least two different contexts.
That was good.
Heads are very early. Like this is the earliest what we have. Some of them probably late, but it should be already 1,200
right.
BC. And this is anyway earlier than anything else monumental in Oaxaca.
That's right. Thanks a lot, Albert.
There are at least two questions in the chat. One of them is from Ruben. when talking about the criteria to distinguish between texts and iconography, were you saying that if we understand the signs iconographically, we should not deem them writing per se?
No, I'm not saying it, but I want to say, if you, we Europeans, we have a very strange knowledge of what image is. We don't think so much visually, but Mesoamerica is another place. Like people think a lot visually, they play with images. But when we have iconography also has some function, right? And every motif in an iconographic scene makes sense iconographically. So you put, for example, the deer antlers to the deer to indicate that this is the deer, right? Or you make long ears of the rabbit, then like you can see people interacting in iconography, but this is a meaningful interaction. If you have, for example, a human and suddenly his fire is burning on his head, this is something is going wrong because he's sitting quietly on his throne, and by fire, what can fire do there? So then this is an extra. Then this is a caption. It's like it's another system, another level of transmitting records.
I will ask my question, Albert, if that's okay. I was thinking, and Gordon touched a bit upon this in terms of methodology and evidence. The material you showed, of course, has some limitations. For example, in terms of quantity, also in terms of chronology, if I understood correctly. But if I remember right, in your definition of writing, one element was that it should convey meaning in a particular language, not just any language, but in a particular identifiable language. So the notion of glottography, right? To what extent and how often and in how many examples, if any, do you think that at this point right now, we would be able to demonstrate this belonging to a specific language? Do we have any hints?
What I want to do here is to prove that this is something like this is a writing, right? We gathered how many like 12 signs so far. This is our corpus. So it's not enough for making a hypothesis what would be the language of the script, right? And there is a big stretch between what is the language and how to prove that this is the language, right? With epionic writing, with it, of course, it's not easy, it's problematic, but still you can find evidence for a Mesoamerican language. You can say that such and such behavior of the signs indicates, but in this case not.
I was familiar with La Cadena's proposition for early Maya and the cases of the B and M series and all of that, but I was wondering how much we could find out, not from indirectly from the Maya script, but from these early examples, in your opinion. And also because you mentioned that certain combinations of signs would appear to be gibberish. I think it was the word you used. Strange combinations that, according to your opinion, more likely are puns and are functioning as writing.
But actually, what is interesting, these two specific contexts, when, let's say, a ruler impersonates a feathered serpent, and the name of the feather serpent. And the feather serpent is this same the same pattern we can see with maize baby. And this is a significant combination because Thunderbolt maize baby, he is actually called people call him not maize baby, but lightning baby. Right? And of course, the combination Quetzal serpent is a very meaningful one. But this it is not enough to catch the language. This actually, it would be logographic sign. Of course, we can say that this is a pure logographic system, but I don't believe in such system. But maybe.
Thank you. Could I also ask you to elaborate, because I didn't catch up all the details. Elaborate. You said something about a final position, maybe of a verb in the monument 13 from La Venta. Would you mind elaborating on that hypothesis, that interpretation?
I will show once again the monument. I guess it's easy. So what we see here, we see a person looking right and going right. And we have signs in front of him and they are looking right too. And then we have another sign behind. So when we start to read, this would be very strange to read from here there, because this column is complete and this one is not, first of all. Second, they usually start on this part. If person looking left, they would be in this part. And if they're looking right, they start in this
I see.
And then it is the fact that Mihisocian languages are only languages in Mesoamerica with a final.
I see now. I see. Thank you, Albert.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you so
much. And
of
course, if you want to say that this is a date, and it might be a date, but it might be a calendrical name too. But calendrical names are not that popular in this area. But if it's a date, then it's also logical. First date, then name, and then the verb.
Would it be possible for me to make a comment?
Sure, by all means.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, of course.
I think this is a really good example. I think this is the most important example with regard to Olmec writing, because it's the only case where we have a linear sequence that looks like that looks like writing. Okay, we still have the problem of identifying the signs and associating them with the language, and of course the sequence is very limited. We just have 3 signs in one sequence, and then we have what might be a sign or what might be iconography behind the backside of the individual, which is an odd place to put it. But nevertheless, the problem is the limited corpus, and this is very late. I mean, 400 to 200 BC is the very, very end of the Olmec period, after we already have Zapotec texts that are clearly writing, where you have, in fact, even 2-column inscriptions. So on the face of it, if we talk about what fits the criteria that we regard worldwide as writing, the Zapotec system would be earlier than the Olmec on present evidence. And
if we consider, if we are looking for lineal text, so lineal texts are certainly the earliest lineal text.
That's all you can establish as writing at this point, when you don't have a text you can read. I mean, you can argue for name glyphs in headdresses, but you can argue against it as well. So it's an idea that's important, but it's an idea. It's not even a hypothesis, because a hypothesis has to be built on established facts. And in this particular case, you only have one clear example in Mesoamerica, and that's in the Olmec, in the Maya area. The Aztecs didn't put name glyphs into their headdresses. It's not typical of the Mixtec area. It's not, and as far as Mihisaki is concerned, we have to be strict here. You can't say, well, it would be unusual, for example, in the case of Monument 13, for the Mihesoki to have named people after calendar date, because we just don't have that depth of information. We don't even have text, even from the 16th century, we don't have enough text describing Mihesoki society to know what, at that very late date, 3,000 years after the period you're talking about, you know, how their naming practices were. So this is a real problem when we say just because they're the descendants of a people speaking an earlier language that we find in these monuments, therefore their practices, naming practices are the same. Romans had a completely different naming practice to modern Italians. So I know I'm playing the devil's advocate here, but I think it's important. We have to be able to prove what
this is important, but actually when I say that these people didn't do this, what I meant is that in general for southern or eastern Mesoamerica, calendrical names are not typical. We do have calendrical names in Maya area. Right. And today we have in early colonial period we also have calendrical names from Chol and Maya highlands, but they're associated with in Maya highlands. This is a proper tradition, but in Maya lowland they're associated with foreigners all the time. And what is also important, and we have a long text from Lamahara, which is just a couple of centuries later, you know, and we don't have calendrical names there. And we do have inscribed names there. Actually, in epi-Olmec writing, they are prolific inscribed names.
But so then, I'm sorry. What I was trying to say was simply that we've got to be careful not to say broadly Mesoamerican societies do this and do that, because even with regard to calendrical names in societies that had them, like compare the Aztecs and the Mixtecs, who were neighbors. The Aztecs almost never show the calendrical name of the person. It was avoided. The Mixtecs, on the other hand, did it everywhere. And so the practice is very considerable, even when they, or at least the graphic practices vary considerably, even when the social practice is the same.
But what I want to say, what I'm doing here, it is not just why it is important. Let's put it this way: if we say that criteria of lineal text is indispensable for positing a writing system, then the writing didn't exist in Teotihuacan.
But right? Did I say that? I'm saying that all the evidence we have is indispensable, but we also have to judge the depth of the time we're dealing with and prove the continuity, and that's very difficult for all of us.
It's very difficult for all of us, and of course, like for example, we want to say that Monument 13 from Levantan doesn't look like epi-Olmec text.
No.
But why? But actually, it looks like. Just make. We just need to make signs smaller, and instead of 4 signs on the Monument 13, to write 600 of Lamahara. Absolutely the same. And of course, the erosion of the state of preservation is different. The technique is very different. So this might be the reason why they look so different.
But we need more corpus.
Yeah, we need more corpus, and maybe this is essentially the same system. Just we have a very different media in one time, other media in another time. So it's difficult.
Could be, yes. Thank you. Thanks again, Albert.
Albert, I'm just rather protective of the classical block. So I wish someone who so insistent on the subject of iconography make the reference to, let's say, Gerolimon's list of signs and just to show me which sign of Gerolimon's catalog is present on the Cascahal block. and just to explain what it means, because with iconography we can interpret science as visual science, but with Cascahel block we can't. And to put the signs in such an order and grouping the signs in such a way that is done on the Cascahel block doesn't suggest that it's just pure iconography. It suggests something else.
I don't know what Cascahel is. It might be iconography. It might be a list of tributes. It's a unique example. It might be fake.
Well, it's unique, but the signs are still there, because some signs of the from the Cascahel block are, for example, present as small, let's say, inclusions on the bodies of dwarfs. So we have dwarfs, and they have small signs on their parts of the bodies. We have the same signs from the block of, for example, on the figurines. So they are present in the way, let's say, Maya will use their glyphs later, marking as body marks, so body markings. Then we have this wonderful disc from San Lorenzo, you know, from the Red Palace. So what these signs are? So they are definitely not the text. Any kind of, yes, there can be a text, but they are not iconography. Okay, if they are iconography, they are birds' feet, but what kind of bird? Why they are there? Why? So why? What kind of iconography? We have to try to interpret them, and then. Just another small point about the stamp. So we have stamps with Olmec signs, as you remember. There are others with king signs or something like that. And then we have a stamp from Las Bocas in the Snipe Museum collection that has exactly the same signs and as this 3.5 stamp with a tweeting bird. So
interesting.
It might be a text. It still might be a text. It might be a certain kind of a text. It might be writing. I agree with that, but there are signs on seals as well. That's all.
Yeah, we usually interpret seals as stamps for claws.
Yes, but there are signs.
Maybe some of them they actually bear meaningful signs that we can read, not just iconography, not just ornament for cloths.
Not just ornamental. Okay, in the Sellers collection by Field, there is lots of stamps. Cloth stamps, but some of them look definitely like more than just ornamental signs, not just like iconography. With the headdresses, my personal favorite is that we have in Olmec writing, we have Lama Harastella with a wonderful ruler with lots of things in his headdress and nothing of the kind in the text.
Why not? Of course, this is his
name.
No
name like this. No name. The name. If we have a name in the headdress, it's not in. It's not in text.
But we do have this knife in his headdress, right?
Knife.
Yeah.
Okay.
Knife.
Let's.
Bundle knife, and we have the same knife.
No. If it's a knife, because it doesn't look like a knife to me. It looks like a day sign from Zapotec writing. So sorry, it's I know that
the debate is becoming very lively and
very heated, yes, Albert
which is a very good sign. However,
yes, that's why we're
thinking of time.
So thank you. Sorry.
I would like to ask you to maybe you can continue this lovely discussion.
Okay, we'll do it later
in private and exchange all these data and information. And I would like to ask if someone else has any other questions. Otherwise, if not, then I will conclude saying thank you so much, Albert, for your stimulating exploration of the possible beginnings of writing in Mesoamerica. Thank you to everyone who has asked questions and participated. Thank you so much. And I would call it a day. And I'll see you we'll see you next time in 2 weeks' time for a SCRIBO seminar on the origins of the Anatolian hieroglyphic writing with Rostislav Oreshko. Thank you so much again. Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, Gordon. Bye, Evgenia.